Hello and welcome back, and today I want to talk about Terramaster. I know this is like the third or fourth time I've talked about them in like a month. This is a brand that I do talk about on the channel maybe once a month if they're lucky, but more and more we're seeing these new releases coming out in 2020, and Terramaster have kind of looked at some of the key areas of their portfolio, and you can definitely see that they've gone, that works, get rid of all of that. And that's what they've done, because we are seeing a huge increase in two main areas of their hardware. One, in Thunderbolt stuff with the release of their new Thunderbolt devices, as well as a brand new Thunderbolt combined storage and docking station, and also NAS. Their newer generation of NAS solutions, which aren't really upgrades on their predecessor, they're kind of a sideline, are a whole range of 10 gigabit Ethernet solutions. These are NASs that are arriving with quad-core Intel-based processors, DDR3 memory, and arriving with 10 GBE on board. And this is probably the one I was looking forward to the most. This is a 2-bay 10 GBE NAS. Now, right now, this is the only one I've ever seen. I have never seen a 2-bay 10 GBE NAS solution. I've seen NASs that have got PCIe upgrade slots that you can add 10G to for a few extra quid. I've seen NASs from the likes of Synology, Acer Store and QNAP that are 2 bays that have got an area of NVMe SSD cache to improve the internal performance. But I've never seen a 2-bay 10 GBE NAS. Now, why is that so interesting? Well, the F2-422. The reason that's interesting is 10 GBE promotes a bandwidth speed of 1000 megabytes per second theoretical maximum. So on the face of it, you go, oh, I've got 10 GBE, I can get 1000 megs of traffic. But it's not really as straightforward as that. First and foremost, you have to make sure that you're using a 10G connection on your PC or Mac system, or you're using a 10 GBE switch between the NAS and your network. You have to make sure that the 10 GBE can be drawn from it in terms of the external capabilities of your hardware environment. The second thing, and this is probably the most important one, is to do with the hardware inside. Because this NAS, that CPU can handle 10 GBE, that memory, 4 gig in a 2-bay, again, great numbers, are very, very good for 10 GBE. But you've only got 2 bays of storage. 2 SATA bays of storage, which, although theoretically are 6 gigabit each, so 600 megs, the majority of hard drives are not going to give you more than about 250 megs each. And in a RAID environment, you might get 300-400 with some enterprise level drives, or with SSDs, which can often say they can give you 500 or so megabytes per second. Realistically, they will give you between 350 and 400 averaged across different file types. Once you RAID those together, you might get 5 to 6, maybe 700. So what we're looking at here is a 2-bay device that arrives at a 1000 megabytes per second external connection that typically may never even be able to reach it because of the storage media inside. Now, the way this is good is because what I just described is a single file transmission. That is one user actioning one endeavor between 10 GBE, you and the device, and saying, I want to transfer this file or files, and doing one transaction, and it opens up that bandwidth. However, if you're having multiple users interacting with the device at the same time, they can share a lot of that bandwidth. You've still got a bit of a bottleneck there with regard to having 2 media drives inside, but the fact still remains that that bandwidth still does provide a huge number of options. So, for example, this 2-bay, which you can add expansion storage or USB storage to, that will share that 1000 megs. And if you are running IP cameras, if you are running different hardware services via the NAS that don't necessarily write to the internal storage, those are key areas where that 10 GBE or 1000 megabytes per second is made available, and hence why I was really excited about this device. Because although on the face of it, a 2-bay with 10 GBE seems a bit redundant, it actually has a lot of real-world applications and a lot of ways in which a wider area of users can take advantage of 1000 megs in a way a single user can't. And also the idea that a lot of users out there, photo and video editors especially, look at 10G NAS solutions as a way of reinventing their workflow and connecting to a NAS over 10Gbe, editing files directly on the NAS while simultaneously using paired up 1Gbe connections on a local area network or just on the device connected to your ISP router, and using that for distribution and just post, really, after the editing, post in fact, where you have to package things, share things, and basically distribute. But I've been talking now for the better part of a few minutes. Let's have a look at the damn thing. The packaging of this Terramaster is fairly familiar. We've unboxed quite a lot of Terramasters here on the channel, and this one's boxed largely the same. If we have a look inside, we can see our box of accessories. And again, I recently unboxed the 4Bay, the F2-422, which is another affordable 10Gbe NAS from Terramaster. That arrived at about 410, 420. This device arrives at about 300 to around about 310 right now. So for a 2Bay, 300 quid seems a little high, but given that 300 to 310 is about the price of the Synology DS220 and the price of the TS251D, you are getting a quad-core NAS compared with those dual-core NASs. You're getting 4 gig of memory compared with those 2 gig of memory, and you're getting 10 GBE, not 1 GBE. Big differences there, but I'll save more of that for the comparison in the next few videos. So inside we've got our screws here for installing 2.5-inch and 3.5-inch hard drives. We have an external power brick. Again, external PSUs to me make a lot more sense, easier to replace. Secondly, no heat inside the box being generated by it. Mains UK lead, but of course wherever you buy in the world you'll get your own lead. This is something I saw in the 10G 4Bay device, although of course it arrives with our Ethernet cable, and I don't know how well this is going to come across on the camera. I don't know if that's going to carry very well, but they include a Cat6 cable, something a lot of brands do not do. And of course 10Gbe, it will take advantage of a Cat6 over a Cat5e, but a lot of brands don't include Cat6 cables because they know they can get away with Cat5e. And I'm only talking about the mid-range, not the top ones, but it's good to see that they didn't scrimp on that cable. There's, again, screws for 2.5-inch MIDI, so you've got 3.5 and 2.5-inch, all clearly labelled. Talking of labels, you've got those weird stickers that I can never really understand what they're for. We have information on our 2 years manufacturer's warranty there on the front, and our first time installation guide and where to find out more information about setting it up for the first time. We have a screwdriver, which again I've always loved. I know it seems really naff and silly because you buy a lot of products, particularly flat pack, that involve a screwdriver included, and I get that. We got a number of these knocking around, we really need one. But I will say that one of the first unboxings for Terramaster I ever did, that device behind me, I still carry that screwdriver in my bag. So again, that's just me. But that's about it for your accessories inside this device. If we move that over, we can take a good look at the unit itself. Quite well packaged for transit there. And again, something I touch on more on the blog, NC, more than I do on these videos, is the idea that packaging materials on a NAS is an area where a lot of budget providers cut corners. Now, I do consider Terramaster to be a bit of a budget company. I don't think they are up there with Synology and QNAP yet. They are escalating very quickly, and I've mentioned before, I think their evolution as a brand has been exceptionally fast compared with a lot of other NAS brands, but it has to be said that overall, their price point, a few of their build elements, and definitely their software, for me, put them into the bracket just below Synology and QNAP, what I consider the third place bracket, with your HPs and your crazy data center hyperscale at the top. You've got QNAP and Synology, who are obviously always moving closer and closer to the top tier. And then you've got this third tier, which have your Acer stores, your Terramasters, stuff like that. And these are brands that are biting at the heels of Synology and QNAP at the desktop range. They're doing very well with Acer Store and their Locker Store series, Nimbus Store, and of course Terramaster producing, frankly, incredibly well priced 10Gbe. So, this is the device. Let's bring that to camera. And there is the device there. That is the F2-422. Now, the F2-422, as mentioned, is a 2-bay NAS. And before we go any further, let's talk a little bit about the software, because the Terramaster currently arrives with TOS, I believe version 4.1. And TOS, again, isn't as full as Synology or QNAP in terms of first-party applications. It supports loads of third-party apps. There's kind of a shaky VM tool on there that I'm not overly impressed with, but there's a great container tool. There is, great support of Plex Media Server. The hardware inside this does allow 4K and 1080p transcoding, both natively and to a slightly lesser extent within Plex Media Server. On top of that, you've got Apple Time Machine backups, cloud backups, NAS to NAS backups, NAS to USB backups. You've got snapshots and, of course, BTRFS, a great file system with file self-healing, easier shared folder duplication, and that ability of having snapshots have a lower resource indent in the background when they're being utilized. So BTRFS, formerly something that really only Synology was running in NAS, is something they've adopted as well. Now, in terms of the hardware on show here, this is probably one of the better looking NASes for me. I quite like this 2-bay chassis design. I know the light's a little bit aggressive there behind the camera. And again, the main controller board is on this side. As you can see, that's why that's quite wide. It's almost 3 drives wide. The trays themselves, although much better than those I saw in the early generation of Terramaster NAS. Let's open one of these up and show you. Have a little look. Open that out. You can see here their early generation of drive trays there were very, very weird. They were kind of just a little U shape there, held in by 4 screws. It felt very flimsy, as you can see there. And this is like basically their first generation of device. And this was only about 5, maybe 6 years ago. And of course, things have escalated very, very rapidly from them in many, many ways. Not just their hardware and software architecture, but just generally little bits about their branding, for example. I mean, the trays now, they are plastic trays, but they're very rugged. They're not click and load. They are quite sturdy drives as well, and they've got the screw holes in the base for 2.5-inch and 3.5-inch media. If we remove the other tray, you can see inside there you've got the 2 SATA connectors there at the back. Let's try and get those better on screen. And of course, that rear-mounted fan drawing cool air over the drives whilst it is in utilization. To access the memory modules on the rear of this and upgrade the internal hardware, you do need to remove a few screws to get inside. It's not as easy to access the memory modules on this, which I know might annoy some people. But apart from that, the ventilation seems very, very good inside, quite modern looking, particularly internally. The disbursement of heat, both from the fan and through passive cooling there on the base. And on the, if you have a look at the trays there, there's ventilation based in a number of areas to keep things cool and to also pass that air over both the hard drives, the main controller board with its CPU and memory, and over the heat sinks on top of those as well. We've got LEDs there at the front there in dot form. If we have a little look and bring that forward. And those LED lights there denote drive access, network access, and basically system status. They have their logo there on the side of the chassis, but it's not like Synology when they've got that nice slick embossed effect, or some of the higher grade QNAPs that have got the Q that's ventilated. Theirs is just the printed logo. It's either side, as you can see there. And on the base, as mentioned, plenty of ventilation there to work with the active cooling fan. Now, if we look at the rear, we can see those ports. And this is where things can get very interesting. Now, if we have a look at what we have here, we've got this rear-mounted fan, the RPM of which, rotations per minute, can be adjusted manually, but it is recommended that you leave it as automatic because that fan will adjust its power in line with the internal temperatures on this device. It will lower the noise a little bit. It's not a particularly noisy drive unless you use enterprise drives, hard drives, but still, nevertheless, I would leave that fan at automatic and let it do its thing. Now, we've got the external PSU there at the base. I believe this is a 60 or 65 watt PSU. I'm sure it's been on screen. And again, that PSU external means that the device can just carry on doing what it does. Now, one disappointing thing there at the top is that HDMI output. Currently, Terramaster does not have an HDMI-based graphical user interface, or GUI, and that is utilized for configuration and effectively Linux code purposes. So if you try to connect a monitor to this device, you're not going to get anything useful. It is not designed to be comparable to the HDMI port on, say, a QNAP or an Acer store. They do not have the graphical user interface in place currently on these devices to take advantage of the HDMI. The HDMI is connected to the main system, and there are discussions and plans about bringing the GUI over into TOS, but I think that's going to be the next version of TUS later in the year. Now we've got USB 3 there at the top, and both of these are 5 gigabit per second USB ports, which allow you to connect supported wireless dongles, external drives, UPSs. The range isn't enormous. There isn't peripheral support of keyboard or mouse because there's no GUI for that, but there's still quite a lot of compatible peripherals, and as I mentioned at the top of the video, the ability to add external drives to this and then share that 1000 megs not just with network connectivity of a single connected user, but also with connected devices to your NAS network. Now underneath that, you can actually see 3 LAN ports. You've got 2 1GBE ports there, so you've still got your standard 1 gigabit Ethernet across both of these connections, which can be link aggregated to give you up to 2 GBE, so 100 to 200 megabytes per second connectivity to a local area network. If you are utilizing a supported lag switch, you'll get that 2 GBE. But it's this port right here that's the most interesting. That is our 10 gigabit Ethernet port. That allows us to communicate with this 2-bay NAS over 10 GBE. And remember that price tag, $310 give or take? That is a really impressive price point for a device that arrives with 10 GBE on board. And given that a lot of 10 GBE solutions fall into 2 categories in the desktop level, you either get affordable 10 GBE that's got like an ARM 64-bit processor, which doesn't really give you the full height of 10 GBE, or on the flip side, you end up with Intel-powered 10 GBE NASs, which will always add another 150, 200 quid to the asking price of a NAS that doesn't have it. It doesn't take advantage of fiber or SFP+. This is 10G base T copper, so again, it is backwards compatible with 1 GBE, but I will investigate about if it's possible to lag or port trunk with those 1 GBEs and 10 to give you a theoretical 12 gigabit Ethernet between this and your local supported switch network. Now, I've kind of half spoken about the internal hardware. The main 2 bits of hardware that we care the most about, of course, are the CPU and memory. The CPU is the J3455. It is an Intel Celeron-based processor. It's the Apollo Lake series. A lot of newer generation NAS has moved into the Gemini Lake, I believe, and that is the J4000. So the J3455 here is a quad-core 1.5 GHz processor that can be burst up to 2.3. So again, AES encryption, great floating point, 4K transcoding, and a lot of multi-user juggling and support at any given time. It also arrives with 4 gig of memory inside that can be upgraded up to 8 gig. And again, at that price point, it makes it very, very hard to argue with this based on what you're getting for your money. And that's even if you removed the 10 GBE. Think about that. This is a quad-core 4 gig NAS that's already got 2 1 GBEs, it's already got USB, it's already got support with SATA up to 16 TB Seagate Ironwolf, or SSDs currently up to like Seagate Ironwolf 110 at 4 TB. This has that going on, and it has a better design, a company that is evolving and moving forward. There's a lot of features found in QNAP and Synology that have kind of moved from this platform, and by move, let's call it what it is. Terramaster have looked at the things people like and then gone, oh, we're going to do that, we're going to do that, we're going to do that. And sometimes that's okay, because more budget-conscious users want a lot of those features and functionality, but they don't want everything. They want select bits. And that's a lot of what this company are doing. They're focusing on those hot point areas. For example, when it comes to email support, one of the things that I quite like is on the back there at the top, and it's going to be very hard to make this out on the camera, there's a little sticker on the back that allots where to contact to get email support, tech support and a live chat, as well as if you include your serial number, which is on the base of the device, to get faster support. They know the areas that people are kind of focusing on. SSD caching is something that is available on this. And don't forget, although this is a 2-bay NAS, there is lots of ways around that 2-bay bottleneck. One key point, where is it? is drives such as the QDA from QNAP or the QDA A2AR, adapters like these which can be introduced to allow you to turn two M2 NVMe's or M2 SATA drives into a single 2.5-inch drive, or this which allows you to turn two 2.5-inch drives into a single 3.5-inch one with the RAID pre-built inside, effectively allowing you to put 4 SSDs with 2 of these inside into this and hit that 1000 megs nice and easy. What I'm saying is, this is a solution with a lot of future-proofing in it. Is it perfect? No, it definitely isn't. 2 years of warranty is a little shorter than I would like. The design it's much better than it was, but it still has a way to go for some of us. And it has to be said that it still does feel a little bit plasticky overall. The software could also do with a few extra apps. There's key apps like surveillance apps missing. And even though they could do what Asustor did when they don't have their own app, get a third-party supplier such as VirtualBox for their VM tool, Terramaster's not really gone that far yet. And although it has an HDMI port, the fact that you can't utilize it at this stage and have an HDMI graphical user interface, maybe with a mobile remote control, that's something I would like to see in the future, but it's just not present now. But these are small things in the grand scheme of it when you're paying just over 300 nika for a 10Gbe 2-bay NAS with a quad-core Intel and 4GB of memory. Those elements alone more than make up that price tag for those of you that are going to take advantage of third-party apps. But this has been the F2-422 from Terramaster. We'll be comparing this against other 2-bays currently available right now in 2020 to help you guys decide which one deserves your data, as well as full performance overviews and 10Gbe testing of this and the 4-bay in the coming week or so. Thank you so much for watching. Click like if you've enjoyed this video, click subscribe if you want to learn more, and do visit the links in the description to NAScomparesAndSpan.com. One will help you choose the right NAS, the other one will help you find the best price for it. What more do you want? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.